Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. My name is Klara, and I'm on the marketing team at Phrase, and I will be facilitating today's session where Phrase and Paligo come together to talk about bridging the strategic gap between technical content and translation. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing you to our speakers today, representatives of Paligo and Phrase. We have Frederik Carette, an experienced professional in developing and structuring highly technical documentation within the telecommunications industry, as well as in migrating large technical projects to a component content management system. Currently, Frederik is working as an information architect and technical writer at Paligo. Hi, Frederik, how are you?
Hello, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, happy to have you here. And representing Phrase, we have Miklos Urban, our enterprise solutions architect. Miklos has a wealth of experience in the localization industry. His skills vary from managing to engineering roles, and in his most recent role, he has been mostly involved in architecting solutions for major localization buyers. Hi, Miklos, how are you doing today?
Hi, Klara. Hi, everyone. Good to have you here.
Great. So this is awesome. So now let's get into the topic. And without further ado, you can take it away, Miklos.
Yeah, thank you very much. So what are we going to talk about today with Frederik is well, this is the agenda. First of all, I would like to drive you through the generic content pipeline, how it works. So just to have a overview of the whole thing. And then we will go into each part of this pipeline and discuss how to design it, how to design a customized pipeline. Then we will have a couple of words about how to set up things, migrating your content and possibly your localization data into these platforms. And finally, we plan to showcase how this pipeline actually works on two use cases. So that's what we will cover today. Before going into the details, what we are talking about here is to implement a new technology. And when you implement a new technology, that already comes with change management practices. And therefore, it is essential that you keep the technical changes, the process changes, as minimal as possible. Of course, many times you can't get away without any changes into the processes, but the major goal would be to keep them intact. How to do that is the best practices, I would say that you have to review your business processes at a business level and not a technical level. You talk to your stakeholders, internal, external, linguists, content writers, whoever responsible for the content, and discuss why they do certain steps and understand their roles, what they do in their in the content pipeline, and how this process builds up from bits and pieces. You would develop like a race matrix as well that defines the processes and the governance of that process. So once you understand your business processes as they are, you would also want to review where you want to get it, like in a couple of years' time, let's say. What was your vision in terms of the content pipeline? And then you can go out and discover the technologies and see which technology fits the best way to these processes that you mapped out initially. So with that, let me go into the content pipeline. How does it work? And this is just really to set the ground. There are content writers, right, or content editors who create the content into and publish it into a component content management system. In our case, in this tech stack, it's going to be Paligo, right? So that's where the content lives. This is the system that that governs the content all through its life cycle, from creation to publishing and further. If you want to make this content multilingual, then you need to integrate the system with the translation management system. In our case, it's going to be Phrase. Between the two, ideally, there is an integration that seamlessly picks up new content or changed content from the content management system and transfers it to the translation management system, where the content is getting localized via a workflow that makes an ideal combination of machine translation tools and human translation, and make sure that your content gets to the right level of linguistic quality for each use case. Of course, once the translation is ready, sorry, just go back for a second. Yes. Once the translation is ready, the same connector should pick up the content from the translation management system and transfer it back to the component content management system to have a multilingual content base. And when the time comes, the CCMS will publish the content to the right platform, let it be a website or some other platform. So with that, let me give the word to Frederik, who will drive you through the Paligo side.
Thanks, Miklos. Yes, and a little bit of repeating of what you mentioned here before, but looking at it from a component content management system, a CCMS side, if you want to choose to either switch from a CCMS to another CCMS, which happens quite often, but in a lot of cases, you would also switch from unstructured authoring, we're talking about Word documentation, other types of formatting, to structured authoring, XML documentation. There are a couple of things we have to keep in mind, and we want to make the process as smooth as possible. And that doesn't mean let's throw away everything we are currently doing and let's transition to a completely new system. It mostly means, again, let's look at what we're already doing. What are we doing well? What do we like with some of the procedures we are having? And what are the things that we kind of want to get rid of? What is giving us the most issues? So it's important to map out those different workflows, what we want and what we want to keep and what we want to change. And one of the things to keep in mind when you do that migration is not everything that we want to transition from one workflow to the other will have a one-by-one mapping. That means that even though we like a certain procedure, we are changing our tool set, we also have to change our mindset a little bit. So we always have to make sure to think about it healthily and think about what do we need to change, where do we need to make changes to get to that target state. And the target state is to move our documentation, our content model, our translations to a nice workflow within the CCMS. So we want to understand what we are currently doing, and we want to understand what our ideal target state will be before we get into the procedure of choosing which program is going to help us best. Now, a secondary thing is, since we're talking about the multilingual content model here, think about how our translation is going to work within that new system as well. So one of the things that you want to look out for if you're choosing to choose a new CCMS or you're switching to a CCMS is, do they have any potential integrations with already existing translation vendors? And for example, we're talking here and we're going to showcase the Paligo CCMS system that has a built-in integration into the Phrase system that will help maintaining those translations and maintaining your multilingual content model, make it that much easier. So it's something to take into account. What are the possibilities and what will make it easiest for us to maintain those translations? And now I give it back to Miklos.
Yeah, thank you very much. So in terms of the translation management, the main tool of translation management is the so-called translation memory that kind of remembers what you translated. When you first translate the content, it is quite obvious that you have to translate the whole thing. Well, of course, you can use machine translation to help this process, and I will get back to that. But once a content is translated, the TMS will remember it, and this can be reused. So the next time the same content is localized, the parts that did not change will just make it automatically into the content. and only the parts that will have been changed or that are new will be exposed for translation. This is what we call the data management. So talking about automations, obviously it's a great piece in TMS systems. And I mentioned already that you can combine machine translation and human translation in an ideal way that is mapped to your value to the value of your content. In your content portfolio, you can find content that has high emotional impact on your customers and so drive your sales. But you can also find other content that may not need that meticulous linguistic process to reach the goal. For example, your user manuals and things like that, or even support emails and things like that. So what you would consider is a value-driven localization funnel. And in each case, for each value bucket, let's say, you can choose the right mix of machine and humans working together. Beside technology, it's also very important that you set up your vendors, your linguists, and even your local market reviews or reviewers who reside within your company maybe, but at multiple locations around the globe. So that's our considerations in terms of TMS, and I pass back to Frederik to talk about how this gets published.
So talking about publishing pipelines, it's simple, but it needs to be maintained quite thoroughly. So when we talk about publishing pipelines, we talk about what is the end format we are wanting to produce here. Are they PDFs that we have to send to our customers? Do we want to maintain an online help desk? Sometimes we have to send to Word format. And all of those different formats depend, first of all, on the system we have chosen that to migrate to. What does our CCMS support? What is it best at? And it's also important to know how to style these different items. Styling is always a little bit different from program to program. For example, we talk about Paligo. It has built-in layout editing capabilities. Other CCMSs require you to do the layout on the hosting part. Most importantly, when we talk about publishing pipelines, is testing. Whenever we are creating documentation and we are ready with writing, we are ready with translating, and we want to get it out there to the world, we always want to make sure that we have a publishing pipeline that allows for testing and configuring everything so we can see if there is any mistake. So publishing pipelines basically rely on getting that layout set up, getting your format set up, and testing those outputs beforehand. Another part that I would like to touch upon that is very important when we talk about transitioning to structured authoring and to CCMS is the planning of content migration. And in most cases, it would be the most dreaded subject because content migration is never the thing you want to do the most. Whenever you get a new shiny tool, you want to start working on it, you want to start editing, producing new content. But what do we do with all our previous content that we have already written? We want to migrate that. We don't want to redo that in most cases. So we just wanted to highlight a couple of things that can be quite important to keep in mind when you plan those migrations. And the first one is don't shy away from potentially inviting a third-party consultant to do the work, because migration can take up a lot of time. That is something that has to be taken into account. And if you have to edit content very frequently, it might be beneficial to get somebody to do the migration for you. And you can talk to your CCMS vendor what the possibilities are there. Another thing that I think we should not shy away from is post-import cleanup. We can import, and some CCMS programs like Paligo offer us some default import opportunities for existing file formats. But there will always be a little bit of post-cleanup in terms of cleaning up maybe some layout issues, maybe some elements that got scattered. And it's important to make sure that you take the time to do that cleanup, because it also gives you the time to think about, okay, how can I use my documentation within my system now? The last point you see here, taking into account content reuse, variables profiling, all the most important parts that will give you the benefits of our CCMS. Those are the things you can start to think about when you're doing that cleanup. So you kind of get the cleanup done, but you also start thinking about the future. And we also have to think about data translation, and that's Miklos' turn to talk about.
Exactly. So I have already discussed that you actually keep data in a TMS system, and obviously to start using a TMS system, you would need to set up the data if you have anything already upfront. Let's take transition memories a bit back and talk a bit about terminology. One major risk with global content is that your brand integrity gets breached. And the major safeguard on your global brand integrity is the use of a multilingual terminology. It means that your translators and reviewers are warned and checked to use the right expressions that you approved. For example, your product names or important terms within your industry are used correctly and consistently across each and every content. I said translators, right? Translators are humans, and of course, you apply translators, human translators, for the most important content pieces, most of your marketing. But at the same time, you may also choose to apply machine translation to certain content types. And in that case, terminology needs to go further, and it also should be an integral part of the machine-driven processes. The machine translation needs to use this terminology, and if it fails, those segments should be exposed for a human review for sure. And that's something that the TMS can help you to set up workflows where it not only applies terminology, but also checks it. And if there's any breach in terms of your brand integrity, then it warrants a translator and expose it for review. So that's about terminology. Now let's take a look into translation memories. As I said, this is the asset that keeps in memory about your existing past translations. And that makes it possible to leverage your existing translations into the new content. Now, if you have bilingual content from the past, you may want to import it and migrate it to your new technology stack. One way of doing it, if you never use a TMS system, is to align the existing parallel corpora. So that means that you just take your source content and target content side by side and align these sentences. There are automatic tools, of course, to drive this. But if you have used a TMS system before, then there are formats that facilitate this export and import to a new system. Of course, it may come with a loss, but you can trust your TMS provider or even your LSP vendors, linguistic vendors, to help you to migrate the content with the least loss possible. So yeah, with that, I think we kind of finished what we wanted to talk about in a nutshell. Now we will put this whole thing into practice. And so once we prepared legacy content, we imported the content into the CCMS, we cleaned up the content and prepared the bilingual data in the TMS and your terminology in the TMS, then we can start piloting the first content in this new tech stack. So that's what we are going to show, how the content goes through the system. There are two use cases that we will cover. The first one, well, actually, it's about the company. It's a company that went global, and it already supports certain markets, but this time it is trying to break into a new market. And before breaking into this new market and launching the products in this new market, they want to do a market research. But to do the market research, they need to have some kind of a, let's say, good enough presence in content-wise in that market. So that's what we will demo here with Frederik. Basically, a content will go through for this market, I think it's German, to get translated automatically via the TMS. And with that, let me give the word, and I think the screen as well, to Frederik.
Thanks, Miklos. Yes, exactly. So let me get the Paligo instance up and running here, and let's actually make it a bit bigger so it's easier to see. So what we will be doing today, as Miklos just explained, is we will show you how the integration between Paligo and Phrase works and how we can send over a documentation set and quickly get it translated via the TMS. So in the background, what I already did is I set up the integration with Phrase, and you might have seen the little screenshot on the slides as well. It's just a quick IP connection. And we will be using this documentation set. So just something to note here, and I can show you on the left-hand side in Paligo, this document exists out of a couple of different topics. So I'm going to send out the translation for the full document this time. I already have German added as a language, but just in case we want to know, I could always add more languages or remove languages via the language interface. But currently we will be working with German for our first test here. So what I can do is I can open the interface and go to translations, and I can see here my English is, my source language is 100% ready. German is a new one that we want to activate, and we need to translate it. So I can directly from this view export my translation, and let's do it from here, and then I will import it back in the translation view itself. So I can select export translation and send my German to Phrase, which will automatically pop up since I've integrated with them. And from here, I can choose a project that we have set up together with Phrase. So we will choose the webinar integration right now, and I don't have to set any due dates because we want it immediately. So I can just export my format, and this will be exporting it via XLIF format. So there we go. I also get a local copy in case I want it, but that's it on our side. I can open my translation view here, and you see my status is in translation, which means that other writers will not be able to edit it while I am actually editing content. So I can now go to my translate view, where I can see here, I have my English version on the left side in green because it has already been approved, and my German version is still in English. So let's export our translation. That we already have done that, so I can import it back since it goes quite fast. So what I can do is I can select Phrase again from the import, and I can see here immediately these are the languages that Phrase has ready for me. Spanish I don't need at the moment because it's for a second demo, but German is what we want, so I can just select that one, import it, and let the CCMS handle the rest. There we go, that imported it back in. And then what I can do is I can just refresh my system, and I can see my German popping here. So what I can do now is if I have in-house translators, I can go over one by one to set the translation as complete, editing it if it's necessary. But since we know that Phrase is a good TMS, we can just approve this and know that all our documentation is ready for translation. So I set my translation as complete, and my journey is done. It will re-index it, and it will set that as 100%. So I can now publish this out for a potential German customer. Let's talk about the second phase of our demo, which will be a little bit more complex. Instead of going to German, what we're going to do this time is we're going to use a Spanish translation that we already prepared for us. But what I will do is I will make a couple of small adjustments to the first topic, just so we can see how Phrase handles small changes without having to retranslate everything. So I will do that on my side, and then I will give it back to Miklos. So the first thing I will do for this test is I will open this topic. I will put it back to work since it was in translation before. And let's make a change, right? So the first thing that I want to change is content model platform. We can call this one component content system, for example. And then the secondary thing we can do is let's add a new paragraph and say, there we go, a quick update. I'm happy with that. So I can save this and I can go over the workflow again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my folder here. I'm going to, again, pop this one in translation since we have a new topic with some changed text. So I'm just telling the system, hey, there is some changes, and you can see it reflected that immediately. Everything is not fully approved yet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly open my translation view again. I'm going to say the new stuff that we just written before in English, I'm going to approve. That one is totally fine. That's the step one. And then step two is I'm going to go to my Spanish, and you can see Paligo recognizes that we have made some changes and added something. So I'm going to send this over to Phrase again. Export the Spanish version to Phrase inside their folder. Export. And that's it from my side. I will stop sharing my screen, and Miklos, you can take over again.
Thank you very much. Should be able to see my Phrase screen.
Yes.
Thank you. So what happened in the background, this project has been filled with content. So what you can see here, this project is open, called Paligo Integration for Webinar. It has target languages, German and Spanish set up. It has some metadata that we are not going to discuss now. And we have these two files here, right? The first one is the German file that I didn't present because everything happened automatically in the background. Actually, it got completed automatically. And if we go in there just for a second, then you can see that same machine translation inserted into the screen, into the grid, as what Frederik showed you on the Paligo side. On the other hand, we have the Spanish file appeared here. And let me just refresh the screen now. And it was recognized automatically in the background that it requires a different workflow. So in terms of the German one, the workflow was to automatically translate using machine translation, because that was the requirement by the documentation department, right? They just wanted to have a good enough translation to shoot it out so they can run the market analysis. On the other hand, for Spanish, which is an established market, they need good translation. And therefore, anything that is new, it needs to be assigned to a provider. So in this case, you can see that the automation picked up this content. The status now is emailed, and that means this user, well, it's called translator test, is assigned to this job. And if I log in the name of this user, I would see this job for editing. But I will simulate this now from this admin screen, and I just open this file up for editing. Okay, there we are. Let me just move this one a little bit down. Okay, so what you can see here is we have segmented data. Each segment is either represent a sentence or some kind of like a title. That's what you see here. And for many of the segments, you see the color is green and it says like 101 or 100%. What does it mean? That these translations exist in the translation memory. If I click one of those, you can see that this 100%, we call it a match, comes from a translation memory called Paligo integration that was created February the 8th, obviously when we prepared for this presentation. And you can see some other metadata and information about this, this segment in the transition memory. Okay, so most of the content that was already translated is stored in the transition memory. And you can see that we have a lot of those segments that are one-on-one matches. Where there is a change, that Frederik showed you to that he edited, there we have different numbers. We have this one. This one shows that we have an 86% match. What does it mean? Well, 86% match means that there's some change in the content. And here you can see the actual change that Frederik did just minutes ago. So this documentation platform has been deleted, and instead of it, it's a component content system that was added. So as a translator, I can see this change. I can see that it's an 86%, so I need to edit it. I need to add that 14% to match completely the new source text. And that's what's going to happen here. I translated it. Sorry for the loose translation, but let me just do it this way. Okay, I hit Ctrl-Enter. That marked it a confirmed segment. It could be automated that all the rest is also confirmed, but you can also choose to go to kind of leave them open and even ask your linguist to review the content. Or as said, you can automatically confirm these segments when the so-called pre-translation happens from the transition memory. The segments are inserted into the content. There's another segment that shows 56%, but it's underlined with this dashed line. What does it mean? If I click on it, you can see that this translation actually doesn't come from a transition memory. It comes from MT, machine translation. And it also tells you that this machine translation, in this case, comes from Amazon Translate. That's a longer topic, what actually it means, how the engine is chosen and set up and so on. But let's just mention that you can freely set up a number of engines out there, or you can use Phrase's own Phrase MT engine, even customized. So in this case, it's the Amazon Translate that provided this translation. The 56% is so-called quality estimation, or QPS score. That's what we call it, the Phrase Quality Performance Score. This is based on AI system in the background that tries to identify any problems with the segments linguistically. So that would be a marker, a pointer to the translator, how good the translation is that comes from the MT, and if how bad he or she can expect. Okay, so from now on, let me just translate this one and close the translation. Sorry, I forgot to do something. Not close the translation, but I want to complete the translation. So I just set it to complete it. Okay, so now if I close it, after the screen refreshes, you see that the translation is now completed. Of course, if I logged in as a translator test user, I would see only this job, but let's pass the screen and work back to Frederik so he can show the final part.
Thanks, Miklos. Let's see what is left for us to do, which is not that much. So we are back at our document here. Everything has been handled in Phrase, so I can just go again, import our translation, choose Phrase. I just need my Spanish version back and I can import it. And the same procedure will happen. It will push in the newly translated content. I'm just gonna manually refresh that. There we go. And then I can say, oh, my new changes look correct. So I can just set those as complete, and my new line has also been translated. So everything is ready, and I can go ahead and publish these documents out, both in English and English, German, and Spanish. So that's kind of the workflow between the Paligo and Phrase integration.
Are we ready for questions now? Yes, amazing. Okay, so I will take over the screen sharing and let's have a look. Okay, let's start from the top. Just a second here. All right. Is the Phrase TMS comparable to Trados regarding functions? Miklos.
Yes. I'm not sure if I'm in a position here to really compare these tools, right? Obviously, Trados is a competitor of Phrase. Well, if you check my LinkedIn, you can see that actually I used to work for RWS, so I know a lot about it. They are competitors, similar functionality, similar purposes. Of course, the two tools have their own strengths and weaknesses. What I can say, Phrase is a concise suite of tools that is, I think, unmatched in the industry. It contains the translation interface, the TMS system, translation memory support, machine translation, its own proprietary machine translation that is customizable. It is linked to a number of other machine translation tools. It has its software localization platform, Phrase Strings. It has a very robust analytics support at 3 different levels, all the way to exporting all data into Snowflake so that you can integrate it with your own analytics data coming from other areas of the business. And I'm not sure if I left out the automation platform orchestrator that is a low-code environment where you can define automations. So that's what Phrase is. That's what I can tell you.
Yes, thank you very much, Miklos. Another question by Jörg. Does Phrase have integrated software localization functions, for example?
I see. I actually answered the next 2 questions as well, it seems. So yeah, Phrase Strings is the platform that is designed around software localization. And let me take the next one then as well. Is it possible to integrate DeepL in the translation process? Of course, DeepL is one of the engines that we are connected to, Phrase is connected to. If you want to know more about it, I think it makes sense to discuss it offline and talk more about what is the AI and MT offering of Phrases.
Exactly, we can get in touch afterwards as well to discuss in more detail. Thank you very much. Next question by Sandra. What is the benefit of structured authoring using XML, both from a documentation and translation perspective?
I can take that one. So there are, of course, a lot of benefits, first of all, but one of my favorite ones would be definitely the styling. If we think about structured authoring, especially if we have different corporate style guides, different customers that need different formats like PDF, HTMLs, they all need to be configured a little bit differently. And the whole benefit of structured authoring would be that we all write within XML, we define what we write, if it's a paragraph or a procedure, and then we give it a styling at the end of the road. And this also harkens back to the translation, especially if we're talking about character-based languages, languages that are being read from left to right or right to left. A lot of restyling needs to happen there when you use older techniques like in Word to do those translations. While in XML, we can just, again, as we just showed, send over the XLIF, let the segments be translated, and we don't have to care anymore about the styling because that is only applied at the end of everything in the whole translation management. So I would say that is one of the major strengths of structured authoring in XML.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add to that, Miklos, or can we move on?
Let's go on.
All right. Does Phrase provide a preview that shows the translated text in the layout? For example, website, software, etc. Proofreading in the two-column design is often a challenge.
Yeah, I agree. It's reviewing content or proofreading content as in its final format is always a challenge if it's in a two-column format. Yes, indeed, Phrase has a preview area. That was the area that I was dragging down all the time when I was presenting, if you remember. It was empty for this case because with the Paligo integration, we don't have it yet. At the moment, it would be a question of the future to implement it. But for many other connectors, Phrase have it, and also many file types, Phrase have such a preview where you can see the content already translated in its final form appear in the preview area, and you can do the review there. If you click on one of the word, it will appear in the editor, so you can directly jump there and edit the text there. Yeah, probably in a directed demo, it would be nice to show it how it works. I mean, just back for a second about the structured XML content. Obviously, XML content is a very good friend of DMS systems as well. For an XML content, it's easy to define what to translate and what not to translate. And that's exactly what happens in the background with Paligo integration. We are receiving XML content in the background, and that's Phrase process that XML content.
Thank you very much. Next question from Philip. How long did it take to integrate the CCMS and Phrase TMS as we saw it in the demo? And what are the preparations that need to be considered? For instance, besides the customized workflow you showed for German and Spanish.
I think we can answer that from both sides. So I can take it from the Paligo side. It didn't everything we kind of showed you in this specific demo here. Adding an extra languages or adding more languages would have been just a click of a button at this point in time. And connecting the integration as well. We showed the slide like a little bit before. It's as simple as just as soon as you have a account at the Phrase site, is just putting in the details within Paligo. We have an integration box. So again, a couple of seconds. So in terms of the exact Paligo Phrase connection, yeah, a matter of a couple of seconds and knowing which languages you want to add to your document. Miklos, anything to add from your side?
Definitely. So from Phrase side, the setup included the project created for this purpose and a automation written on Orchestrator, the low-code environment that selected the language, and based on the language applied different workflows. To be honest, well, if the question is how long it took, well, a question of, well, if not minutes, but 10 minutes, maybe. So this is not the time. The time really is to review the processes that you want to cover and understand those processes. That's why I started with that on the very first slide. It's the technology, to apply the technology. Of course, it takes some time to set it up. Of course, it takes some time to migrate the content. But the most important part and most time-consuming part is before the technology changes, to understand what processes you're running and how the technology can cover those needs. And then, you know, once there's a design, there's a plan, then to carry out that plan is the easier part.
Okay. I don't see any other questions at the minute, and I think we are perfect with time. So unless anything else pops up, I think we can wrap it up. So I'm going to thank you, both of our speakers, Miklos and Frederik, for the presentations, the demonstration, and also answering the questions. And just to let our audience know, once we close this session, there will be a short survey popping up where you can let us know your feedback or suggestions for further topics to cover in our next webinars. So thank you very much and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Klara and Frederik, everybody.
Thanks, Miklos. Thank you, Klara.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.